We shall be talking about things you should know before starting programming language.
Firstly, what is programming language?
A programming language is a computer language programmers use to develop software programs, scripts, or other sets of instructions for computers to execute. Secondly, who is a web developer?
A web developer is a kind of programmer who specializes in the development of applications relating to the World Wide Web or distributed network applications, which typically run protocols like HTTP from a web server to a client browser using associated programming languages like HTML/CSS, C#, Ruby and PHP to name a few. A web developer is usually concerned with the back-end or the programming aspect of creating a website or web application and is not to be confused with a web designer, who only deals with the aesthetics of a website or application, although many professionals have both skill sets.
Thirdly, who is a web designer?
A web designer works on the appearance, layout, and, in some cases, content of a website. Appearance, for instance, relates to the colors, font, and images used. Layout refers to how information is structured and categorized. A good web design is easy to use, aesthetically pleasing, and suits the user group and brand of the website. Many web pages are designed with a focus on simplicity, so that no extraneous information and functionality that might distract or confuse users appears. As the keystone of a web designer's output is a site that wins and fosters the trust of the target audience, removing as many potential points of user frustration as possible is a critical consideration.
What are the differences between a web designer and a web developer?
Web designer versus web developer. Developers build a website's core structure using coding languages, while designers are more visually creative and user-focused. Developers use their programming knowledge to breathe life into the designer's creative vision. Think of developers as construction workers, and web designers as architects, both necessary, but different, skill sets.
Who is a programmer?
A programmer is an individual that writes/creates computer software or applications by giving the computer specific programming instructions. Most programmers have a broad computing and coding background across multiple programming languages and platforms, including structured query language (SQL), Perl, extensible markup language (XML), PHP, HTML, C, C++, Python and Java.
Things to start with as a beginner is HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Description to HTML, CSS and JavaScript.
HTML, short for Hypertext Markup Language, is the skeleton of a website and is the very first thing being loaded in the web browser. Here the developer defines what elements should the website have: buttons, images, text, links, etc. CSS. In order to give the ugly site above some design, we need to add CSS, cascading style sheets, code to the HTML site. This could be done either in the same HTML file or can be loaded from the CSS file. However, it's not good practice to write CSS inside the HTML. You should always have an external file or more files for that. JavaScript or site has now a structure and styling but is missing functionality. For example, loading data from another website when clicking a button, changing the text on the website, pretty much anything you can imagine can be done with JavaScript. It is a real programming language where you have functions, variables, arrays and many other programming tools to create logic within your site. There are still more to programming language.
But kindly subscribe to this channel for more interesting update. Thank you.